There are names that echo through the halls of history, names that belong to kings and presidents, to generals and conquerors. But then, there are other names. Names whispered in the dark, spoken with hope, carried on the wind like a prayer. One such name is Harriet Tubman. She wasn't born into power. She wasn't given a crown or a title. She was born into the harshest reality of America's original sin, slavery. Her story doesn't begin in a grand palace. It begins in the dirt and toil of a Maryland plantation, a place designed to break the human spirit. But they could not break hers. Her spirit was not a fragile thing. It was a fire, small at first, but destined to become a raging inferno of defiance and courage. Imagine a world where your very existence is owned by another, where your body, your labor, your children are not your own. This was the world that greeted Araminta Ross, the girl who would become Harriet. She was small in stature, but within her beat the heart of a giant. She endured the cruelty, the back-breaking work, the constant threat of being sold away from her family, from everyone she loved. She saw the casual brutality of it all. She felt the sting of the whip. She felt the deeper sting of injustice. It was a world meant to grind you down into dust, to make you forget you were even human. But Harriet remembered. She held on to her humanity with a grip of steel. It was a head injury, a brutal blow from an overseer, that changed everything. It left her with seizures, with visions, with moments of sudden sleep, but it also opened a door within her. They say it was a disability. But maybe, just maybe, it was a connection to something greater. She began to have powerful visions, divine whispers she believed were messages from God. These weren't just dreams. They were roadmaps. They were promises of a different life, a life of freedom, a life where she could stand tall under a sky that belonged to everyone. The whispers she heard were not of submission, but of escape, of liberation. They were the first notes of a freedom song only she could hear. And so, the whisper within her began to grow. It grew louder than the crack of the whip. It grew stronger than the chains that bound her. It became a roar for freedom, a roar for justice, a roar that said, I am a human being. This was not just a desire to save herself. It was the birth of a mission. The small woman from Maryland was about to take on the entire institution of slavery. She was about to declare a one-woman war against one of the most powerful and evil systems in human history. She was about to become a legend. She was about to become Moses. The decision to run is not a simple choice. It is a leap into the unknown, a step into a world of terror. For a slave, to run was to risk everything. It meant facing the wrath of the slave catchers and their vicious dogs. It meant the possibility of torture, of being sold deeper into the South, of death. It was a gamble against impossible odds. Many thought about it, many dreamed about it. But Harriet did more than dream. She decided. In 1849, the news came that she was to be sold, that her family was to be torn apart, again. That was the moment the roar inside her could no longer be contained. She would not let another person decide her fate. She looked to the sky for her guide, the North Star, that single constant point of light in the vast dark expanse. It was a symbol of hope for countless souls seeking freedom. But for Harriet, it was more than a symbol. It was a destination. It was a promise. She put her faith in that star and in the God who she believed placed it there for her. She moved by night, a shadow among shadows, her heart pounding with a mix of terror and exhilarating hope. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, could mean capture. Every distant bark of a dog sent a chill down her spine. The journey was 100 miles of pure, unrelenting fear. She traveled alone, through dense forests and treacherous swamps, wading through freezing rivers to throw the dogs off her scent. Her knowledge of the wilderness, learned in her youth, became her shield and her sword. She was a ghost in the landscape, invisible to the eyes of her hunters. She found help along the way, from the brave souls of the Underground Railroad. Quakers, free black people, abolitionists who risked their own lives and freedom to help others. They were the secret network, the hidden lifeline. They gave her food. They gave her shelter. They pointed her further north towards the light. She was not just running from something, she was running to something. And then, she crossed the line. The border that separated Pennsylvania from Maryland. The line that separated slavery from freedom. She later said, "When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven." That moment was not just a victory for her. It was a promise that she would be back. She had tasted freedom, and she knew with every fiber of her being that she had to share it. Her work had only just begun. The taste of personal freedom was sweet. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. In Philadelphia, she could walk the streets as a free woman, she could earn her own money, she could make her own choices. For many, this would have been enough. The nightmare was over, the battle was won. But Harriet Tubman was not like most people. Her freedom felt incomplete as long as her family, her friends, her people remained in bondage. Her own safety was a small price to pay for the liberation of others. The quiet life was not for her. The roar inside her demanded action. It demanded justice, and it called her back into the very heart of danger. So she returned. Not once, not twice, but again and again. She went back to the place that had enslaved her, the land that held the ghosts of her past and the ever-present threat of her capture. Each journey south was a dance with death. The stakes were higher now. She was a known fugitive. Posters went up, offering huge rewards for her capture. They called her Moses, a name spoken in hushed, reverent tones by the enslaved and with bitter hatred by the slave owners. She was a phantom they could not catch, a symbol of hope they could not extinguish. She was a living, breathing testament to the failure of their cruel system. Her methods were brilliant, born of necessity and courage. She was a master of disguise, sometimes appearing as a frail old woman, other times as a field hand. She used spirituals as coded messages, changing the tempo of a song like Go Down, Moses to signal whether it was safe to proceed or if danger was near. She carried a pistol, not just for protection against slave catchers, but to instill courage in her fugitive flock. She made it clear there was no turning back. Once you started on the road to freedom with Harriet Tubman, you were going all the way. Her resolve was absolute, and it gave strength to the weary and the terrified. This was not a job. It was a calling, a sacred mission fueled by a deep, unwavering faith and an unshakable love for her people. She navigated the treacherous terrain of the South with an almost supernatural skill. She knew the woods, the rivers, the secret paths. She knew the people who could be trusted and the ones who could not. She faced down armed patrolmen, outsmarted bloodhounds, and led her people through the darkest of nights. With every soul she guided to freedom, she chipped away at the foundation of slavery. She was not just stealing property, as the slavers saw it. She was reclaiming human lives. They called her the Conductor. It's a simple title, but it holds a universe of meaning. The Underground Railroad was not a real railroad. It had no tracks, no steam engines. Its stations were secret rooms and hidden cellars. Its passengers were human beings desperate for a new life. And its most famous conductor was Harriet Tubman. Over the course of a decade, she made an estimated 13 trips into the heart of slave territory. She personally guided more than 70 people, including her own elderly parents, to the promised land of freedom. Her record was flawless. In all her years as a conductor, she famously never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger. Think about the sheer audacity of that, the incredible bravery it took. Each trip was a meticulously planned military-style operation. She often started her missions on a Saturday night, knowing that the newspapers wouldn't print runaway notices until Monday morning, giving her a crucial head start. She was a brilliant strategist, a field general in a war fought in shadows. She chose the winter months for many of her escapes, when the longer nights provided more cover and fewer people were outdoors. She was always thinking, always planning, always one step ahead of the enemy who hunted her relentlessly. Her passengers were men, women, and children. They were terrified, exhausted, and often ill-prepared for the brutal journey ahead. Harriet was their guide, their protector, their source of strength. When a baby cried, threatening to give away their position, she used herbs to help it sleep. When someone's courage failed, when they wanted to turn back and risk the safety of the entire group, Harriet pulled out her gun. She would tell them, "You'll be free or die." It was a harsh choice, but it was a necessary one. A single person turning back could lead to the capture and death of them all. Her resolve was as hard as iron, forged in the fires of her own escape. The legends surrounding her grew with each successful mission. Slaves would whisper stories of Moses, the deliverer who could appear out of nowhere and lead them to freedom. To them, she was a messianic figure, sent by God. To the slave owners, she was a terrifying and almost mythical threat, a ghost they poured money and resources into capturing, but who always managed to slip through their fingers. She wasn't just freeing individuals, she was dismantling the psychological hold of slavery. She proved that escape was possible. She proved that freedom was a right worth fighting and dying for. She was the living embodiment of resistance. When the Civil War erupted, the fight against slavery moved from the shadows into the open. The battlefield changed, but Harriet Tubman's mission did not. Her war was not over. It had just entered a new, more explosive phase. She knew the terrain of the South better than most Union generals. She understood the people. She possessed a network of contacts and an intelligence-gathering ability that was second to none. The Union Army quickly recognized the value of this small, unassuming woman with a will of iron. They didn't see a mere runaway slave. They saw a powerful weapon in the fight for the nation's soul. She was recruited as a scout, a nurse, and a spy for the Union cause. She put her unparalleled skills to work in a new context. As a nurse, she tended to the sick and wounded soldiers, both black and white. She used her knowledge of herbal remedies, learned during her time in the Maryland forests, to cure men suffering from dysentery and other diseases that plagued the army camps. She moved through the hospitals with a quiet confidence, bringing comfort and healing to those in agony. She saw the horrific cost of the war up close, but it only strengthened her resolve to see it through to its conclusion: the total abolition of slavery. But it was her work as a spy that was truly groundbreaking. She was a master of intelligence. She could move through enemy territory without raising suspicion. Who would suspect a humble black woman, seemingly going about her business, of being a highly effective operative for the Union Army? She organized a network of other scouts and river pilots, mostly former slaves, who knew the land intimately. They gathered crucial information about Confederate troop movements, supply lines, and fortifications. She would venture into Confederate-controlled areas, listen to the conversations of slaves and white Southerners, and bring back a wealth of information that was invaluable to Union commanders. This was dangerous, high-stakes work. If caught, she would not have been treated as a prisoner of war. She would have been executed as a spy and a notorious fugitive slave. But fear was a luxury Harriet could never afford. She operated with a cool head and nerves of steel, trusting her instincts and her faith to see her through. She was fighting on the front lines of the war, not with a rifle in her hands, but with something far more powerful: knowledge. She was a warrior in every sense of the word, using her unique experiences and skills to strike a decisive blow against the very system that had once owned her. Of all her incredible achievements, one event stands as a monumental testament to her leadership and courage: the Combahee River Raid. In June of 1863, Harriet Tubman did something no woman had ever done before in American military history. She helped plan and lead a major armed assault. This was not a covert escape in the dead of night. This was a full-scale military raid into enemy territory. Working alongside Colonel James Montgomery, she used the intelligence her spy network had gathered to pinpoint the locations of Confederate plantations and supply depots along the Combahee River in South Carolina. The plan was daring. Union gunboats would steam up the river, burning plantations and destroying Confederate supplies. But the mission had a second, even more profound objective: to liberate hundreds of enslaved people. Harriet had guided the gunboats through the treacherous, torpedo-laden waters of the river, her knowledge of the waterways proving essential to avoid disaster. As the boats moved up the river and the plantations burned, a signal was given. Word had spread through the slave quarters, carried by Harriet's network, that Moses had arrived on a gunboat to lead them to freedom. The scene was one of chaos and pure, unadulterated joy. As the Union soldiers fired on the Confederates and set fire to the symbols of their oppression, hundreds of enslaved people came running from the fields. They ran towards the river, towards the sound of the steam whistles, towards the promise of freedom. Men, women, and children poured out of the fields, carrying bundles, babies, and even squealing pigs. The air was filled with smoke, gunfire, and the sounds of celebration. It was a symphony of liberation, and Harriet Tubman was its conductor, standing on the deck of the gunboat, watching her ultimate dream unfold before her eyes. This single raid resulted in the liberation of more than 750 slaves. It was a massive blow to the Confederacy, both militarily and psychologically. They had lost supplies, property, and most importantly, their workforce. For the Union, it was a stunning success, and at the center of it all was Harriet. She had gone from being the hunted to the hunter. She was no longer just freeing people in small groups. She was now liberating them by the hundreds, backed by the full might of the United States Army. She had become a military leader, a commander who led men into battle and brought her people out of bondage. The end of the Civil War in 1865 and the abolition of slavery did not mean the end of Harriet Tubman's fight. The chains were broken, but the struggle for true equality and justice was far from over. For Harriet, freedom from slavery was only the first step. She knew that real freedom meant having a voice, having rights, and having the dignity that had been denied to her people for centuries. Her work transitioned from freeing bodies to freeing minds and empowering future generations. She settled in Auburn, New York, on a piece of land she had purchased, but her life was anything but quiet. Her home became a haven. It was a place for the poor, the elderly, and the infirm. She opened her doors to anyone in need, sharing what little she had. She understood that the legacy of slavery had left deep wounds and that the community needed to heal together. She worked tirelessly to support her family and her community, farming her land and taking on various jobs. Yet she faced her own battles. Despite her heroic service during the war, the United States government was slow to recognize her contributions. For decades, she fought for the back pay and pension she was rightfully owed for her service as a soldier, spy, and nurse. Her vision of justice expanded to include the rights of all people. Later in her life, Harriet became a powerful voice in the women's suffrage movement. She worked alongside prominent suffragists like Susan B. Anthony and Emily Howland, arguing for a woman's right to vote. She would attend meetings and tell her stories, linking the fight for racial equality with the fight for gender equality. She would say, "I was the conductor of the Underground Railroad for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." She used her legendary status to argue that if she could lead men into battle, she certainly deserved the right to vote. She was a living bridge between the abolitionist movement and the fight for women's rights. She understood that no one is truly free until everyone is free. Her life was a continuous struggle against oppression in all its forms. She fought for the dignity of Black people in a country still rife with racism. She fought for the rights of women in a society dominated by men. She fought for the poor and the elderly who were often forgotten. Until her final days, Harriet Tubman remained a warrior, her spirit unbent, her voice a clear and powerful call for a better, more just world for everyone. Harriet Tubman lived a long life, passing away in 1913 at the age of about 91. She had been born in chains and died a legend. Her life spanned nearly a century of monumental change in America, and she was not just a witness to that change. She was one of its most powerful agents. Her legacy is not just in the number of people she freed or the battles she helped win. Her true legacy lies in the sheer power of her unyielding spirit. She is a towering example of what one person, armed with courage and conviction, can achieve against seemingly insurmountable odds. She proved that one small woman could shake the foundations of a nation. Her story is a testament to the enduring power of hope. In the darkest of times, when despair was a constant companion, Harriet held on to a vision of a better world. She did not just hope for it, she actively built it, one dangerous journey at a time. She embodied the idea that you do not need an army, a title, or a position of power to make a difference. All you need is a belief in the righteousness of your cause and the courage to act on that belief. Her life tells us that heroes are not born, they are made. They are forged in the crucible of injustice and tempered by a love for humanity. The impact of her life continues to ripple through time. She has inspired generations of activists and leaders in the fight for civil rights. Her name is invoked whenever people stand up against tyranny and oppression. She is more than just a historical figure. She is a national icon, a symbol of freedom and resistance. The decision to place her image on the $20 bill is a recognition of her rightful place in the pantheon of American heroes. It is a statement that the history of this nation was shaped not only by presidents and generals in powdered wigs, but also by a formerly enslaved Black woman who refused to be broken. When we remember Harriet Tubman, we remember the best of what America can be. We remember the courage to fight for what is right, even when it is dangerous. We remember the compassion to care for the vulnerable. We remember the resilience to keep going no matter how difficult the path. Her life was a masterpiece of defiance, a symphony of courage, and a lesson for all time. She was a conductor, a spy, a nurse, a suffragist, a warrior, and a humanitarian. She was Moses, and her story is a sacred American text, one that we must continue to read, to tell, and to honor. The story of Harriet Tubman is not just a chapter in a history book. It is a living, breathing call to action for every single one of us, here and now, on this day, July 18th, 2025. Her journey reminds us that the fight for justice is never truly over. It reminds us that there is always work to be done. In a world that still struggles with inequality, with prejudice, with injustice, Harriet's spirit calls on us to be brave. It asks us, what are we willing to risk for what we believe in? What are we doing to help those who are struggling? How are we using our own freedom to uplift others? Her life is a powerful counter-narrative to the stories we are often told. History is full of powerful women, warriors, and visionaries whose tales have been silenced, marginalized, or forgotten. Women who, like Harriet, fought battles on multiple fronts, against systemic oppression and against the prejudices that sought to diminish their contributions. Discovering these stories is not just an academic exercise. It is an act of empowerment. It shows us the full, complex, and inspiring tapestry of our shared past. It gives us a richer understanding of who we are and a bolder vision of who we can become. I urge you to seek out these stories. Learn about women like Ida B. Wells, the journalist who fearlessly exposed the horrors of lynching. Discover Sojourner Truth, whose powerful words demanded recognition for Black women. Read about the forgotten women who were architects of the civil rights movement, the brilliant minds behind scientific breakthroughs, the artists who changed the way we see the world. Their legacies are a wellspring of strength and inspiration, waiting for you to discover them. Their light deserves to shine just as brightly as Harriet's. Do not let these stories fade into the darkness. Let them fuel you. Let them inspire you to be a conductor of change in your own life and in your own community. We all have a role to play in the ongoing journey toward a more just and equitable world. Keep the conversation going. Share these histories, tell their names. If you were moved by the story of Harriet Tubman and want to hear more about the incredible women who shaped our world, I invite you to subscribe and follow. Let us continue to lift these voices up together. Their fight is our fight. Their legacy is our inheritance.